nobody knew me anyway, so, you know, whatever name.
In the revolutionary world of folk and rock history, there existed a figure whose very name could inspire both worship and absolute hatred.
But I don't sense affection, no gratitude or love.
Bob Dylan, the voice of a generation himself, wasn't just a boundary-breaking songwriter who transformed American music forever. He was also a lightning rod for controversy that sparked bitter feuds throughout his legendary career.
Purposely avoids you or purposely confronts you, you know. So,
Welcome to another explosive episode of Music Feuds Uncovered, where today we're diving deep into the shocking world of Bob Dylan and the 6 musicians who reportedly couldn't stand the folk prophet from Minnesota. The Hibbing native behind classics like Blowin' in the Wind and Like a Rolling Stone was known for his uncompromising artistic vision and cryptic personality that apparently rubbed several major artists the wrong way. "I'm not a folk singer. I'm not a rock star. I'm just a song and dance man," Dylan once mysteriously told Rolling Stone magazine. And some people can't handle the dance. That enigmatic attitude, it seems, created plenty of enemies along the way. From Greenwich Village coffeehouse confrontations to electric guitar betrayals, Dylan's battles with these musicians reveal not just personal vendettas, but deeper conflicts about authenticity, artistic evolution, and what music should represent. Some of these feuds played out in scathing interviews, others simmered behind recording studio doors, but all of them left permanent marks on the cultural landscape. So buckle up for a wild journey through music's most bitter artistic rivalries as we count down the 6 musicians who made Bob Dylan's life hell. Trust us, these stories are more twisted than any of his cryptic lyrics and twice as controversial. But before we unveil this folk drama, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. 6. Feuds. Coming in at number 6 on our countdown is a name that might shock folk purists, Feuds.
Stains on the floor.
Yes, the passionate protest singer who was once Dylan's Greenwich Village contemporary reportedly developed a deep-seated resentment toward the folk icon that went far beyond artistic rivalry. The conflict reportedly began in the mid-1960s when Dylan started moving away from explicit protest songs toward more personal, abstract material. According to folk historian Dave Van Ronk, Feuds privately told close associates that Dylan was a sellout who abandoned the movement when it needed him most, and that his artistic evolution betrayed everything folk music should represent. What bothered Feuds wasn't just Dylan's musical direction, but what it represented for the protest movement. While Feuds continued crafting direct political anthems about Vietnam and civil rights, Dylan was achieving massive success with what Feuds reportedly called self-indulgent poetry that ignores the real-world suffering. There's artists, and there's activists. Feuds allegedly told Sing Out magazine in 1966 without naming names, but insiders claimed the comment was directed squarely at Dylan. Some people confuse personal expression with social responsibility. The rivalry reached its peak during a 1965 taxi ride that became legendary in folk circles. Witnesses claim Feuds criticized Dylan's new direction, prompting Dylan to allegedly kick him out of the cab with the brutal words, "You're not a folk singer, you're a journalist." Despite Feuds's continued dedication to political music, he never recovered from what he saw as Dylan's abandonment of the cause that had made them both famous. 5. Donovan. At number 5, we have Donovan, the Scottish folk rock mystic.
The rain was almost drowned beneath the heights of Alma,
who reportedly viewed Bob Dylan as a territorial threat to his artistic identity. The bad blood between these two acoustic poets ran deeper than most fans ever realized.
Donovan! Who's this Donovan? Let's put him right on the sidewalk. Look at him.
The conflict ignited during the mid-1960s when both artists were being compared constantly by music journalists and fans. According to melody maker-writer Chris Welch, Donovan privately referred to Dylan as a paranoid competitor who sees enemies everywhere during a 1966 interview that was heavily edited before publication. What infuriated Donovan wasn't just the constant comparisons, but but Dylan's alleged attempts to undermine his credibility. While Donovan was developing his own mystical folk style, Dylan was reportedly telling industry insiders that the Scottish singer was nothing more than what he called a poor imitation trying to ride my coattails to fame. There's inspiration and there's imitation, Donovan allegedly told NME in 1967, without naming specific targets. But industry insiders knew he was responding to Dylan's dismissive comments. Some artists can't accept that others might find their own authentic voice. The tension exploded during the famous 1965 documentary Don't Look Back, where Dylan's condescending treatment of Donovan became legendary. The awkward hotel room encounter where Dylan seemed to mock Donovan's gentle approach reportedly left lasting scars on the Scottish musician's confidence. Despite Donovan's later success with hits like Sunshine Superman, he never publicly forgave what he saw as Dylan's deliberate attempt to diminish his artistic legitimacy during those crucial early years. Number 4 brings us to Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board, who reportedly harbored a legendary contempt for Bob Dylan that represented a generational war in American music.
Each time I find myself flat on my face.
Old Blue Eyes had some choice words about the folk revolutionary that became industry legend. The feud reportedly began in the mid-1960s when Dylan's influence was threatening the established order of American popular music. According to biographer Kitty Kelly, Sinatra privately told associates that Dylan was a tone-deaf amateur who wouldn't last 5 minutes in a real recording studio, and that his success proved the music business had lost its standards. What bothered Sinatra wasn't just Dylan's unconventional voice, but what it represented for musical craftsmanship. While Sinatra had spent decades perfecting his vocal technique and song interpretation, Dylan was achieving massive acclaim with what Frank reportedly called untrained warbling that insults real singers everywhere. There's entertainers and there's noisemakers, Sinatra allegedly told Variety in 1966, stopping just short of naming Dylan directly. Some people mistake amateurism for authenticity, but the public deserves better. The rivalry reached its peak when Sinatra was asked about contemporary music in interviews. His dismissive comments about folk singers who can't carry a tune became legendary, with everyone understanding the target. At industry events, witnesses claim Sinatra would visibly grimace when Dylan's music played. Even decades later, Sinatra never softened his stance, representing the old guard's resistance to the cultural revolution Dylan had helped unleash on American music. Third, Johnny Cash. At number 3, we have Johnny Cash, the man in black.
Well, you wonder why I always dress in black, why you never see bright colors,
whose tension with Bob Dylan reportedly stemmed from a complex mix of respect and resentment that defined country music's relationship with folk revolution.
Johnny Cash was, at that time, if not now, maybe he was the epitome of country music. He was...
The rivalry between these two American icons was more nuanced but equally bitter. The conflict began in the late 1960s when Dylan was experimenting with country music on albums like Nashville Skyline. According to country music historian Peter Guralnick, Cash privately told Nashville insiders that Dylan was a tourist in country music who thinks he can master our traditions overnight, and that his approach showed disrespect for the genre's authentic roots. What made matters worse was Dylan's apparent dismissal of country music's established hierarchy. While Cash had paid his dues in the Nashville system and earned his credibility through years of touring, Dylan was reportedly being hailed as a country innovator after what Cash called a few studio sessions with session musicians who did all the real work. There's country music and there's city folks playing dress-up, Cash allegedly told Country Music magazine in 1970, without naming names but clearly referencing Dylan's Nashville period. Some people think changing your hat makes you a cowboy. The feud intensified when both artists were considered for the same film and television projects. At a 1969 industry gathering, witnesses claim Cash deliberately avoided being photographed with Dylan, reportedly telling a journalist, "I don't pose with people who treat my music like a costume they can put on and take off." Despite their later collaborations, the underlying tension never fully disappeared, representing country music's complex relationship with outside influences. 2. Joanie Mitchell. Coming in at number 2 is Joanie Mitchell.
Those illusions that I recall.
The confessional songwriting genius whose alleged resentment toward Bob Dylan reportedly centered on gender dynamics and artistic recognition in the male-dominated music industry.
And Dylan? Yeah. No, and that remark is completely out of context. The interviewer was an
The rivalry between these two lyrical masters cut deeper than professional competition. The bad blood began in the early 1970s when both artists were being hailed as the greatest songwriters of their generation. According to music journalist Cameron Crowe, Mitchell privately told associates that Dylan received disproportionate critical praise for what she called the same confessional writing that women artists do better but get less credit for. What infuriated Mitchell wasn't just the gender disparity in recognition, but Dylan's alleged dismissive attitude toward female songwriters. A former record executive told Rolling Stone that Mitchell once referred to Dylan's approach as masculine posturing disguised as deep artistry and believed his cryptic persona was a way to avoid genuine emotional vulnerability. There's mystery and there's hiding, Mitchell allegedly told a Canadian journalist in 1974, without naming names but clearly referencing Dylan's evasive interview style. Some artists use confusion to seem profound when they're actually just afraid to be honest. The rivalry reached its peak during the 1975 Rolling Thunder Revue Tour, when Mitchell was invited to participate, but reportedly felt marginalized by Dylan's controlling approach. Witnesses claim tensions erupted backstage over creative control and performance time allocation. Even decades later, Mitchell's comments about Dylan remained notably cool, focusing on technical aspects rather than acknowledging his cultural impact, suggesting wounds that never fully healed. 1. John Lennon. Taking the number 1 spot is the most shocking entry of all. John Lennon. The Beatles' revolutionary songwriter whose alleged hatred for Bob Dylan reportedly stemmed from a deep-seated rivalry over who truly spoke for their generation. The tension between these two cultural icons made their rare collaborations feel like elaborate truces. The conflict began in the mid-1960s when both were being hailed as the voice of youth rebellion. According to Beatles historian Mark Lewisohn, Lennon privately told associates that Dylan was a pretentious fraud hiding behind harmonica and mystique, and that his influence was overrated compared to the Beatles' global impact. There's revolution and there's posing, Lennon allegedly told Melody Maker in 1970, clearly referencing Dylan's protest period. Some people wave flags while others change the world. Even after the Beatles disbanded, Lennon's comments about Dylan remained notably sharp, suggesting a rivalry that transcended music and became about legacy itself. And there you have it, the 6 musicians who reportedly couldn't stand the voice of a generation. What do you think? Was Dylan's artistic evolution worth all the burned bridges? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more music drama. Keep questioning everything just like Bob taught us.